This is my tape deck from high school, and it doesn't work anymore. And I don't listen to tapes, but I'm still gonna fix it.
So yes, I never really intended to make this kind of video, but after watching a video I saw on Techmoan's channel, he was talking about how they just don't make tape decks the way that they used to. And he showed some examples of some poorly made current modern day tape mechanisms, and they really didn't look anything like these. They were very cheap, and just you could tell just by looking at them they didn't have the same quality or care put into them like these old ones do. Well, since I already owned a tape deck, this Sony model TC-WR690, I figured, well, let's see if I can fix it. I remember getting this as a gift back in late 1992. This was a pretty typical Sony cassette deck for the era, dual cassette deck, Dolby noise reduction B&C, auto reverse, etc. So without even opening up this tape deck, I think I already know what the problem is, and it's basically what every problem is on these old tape decks. It is the rubber belts. So for $31, that seemed like a pretty reasonable cost for a do-it-yourself repair, so I went ahead and ordered the proper belt set. You can find these anywhere on eBay and Amazon. They're all over the place. The tools I'm using are a small Phillips head screwdriver, a small flathead screwdriver, and the replacement belts. Start by removing the 4 screws that hold the lid in place, located here. With the screws removed, gently squeeze it from the bottom and kind of pull it apart a little bit, and it comes out very easily like that. Now carefully turn the unit upside down, and you're going to want to remove these screws right here. As an interesting note, I had initially removed those feet as well because I didn't know at the time which ones needed to be removed and which ones didn't. So if you have this unit, the feet there in the front can stay on. You just have to do the screws that I pointed out with the arrows. Carefully turn the unit back over, and it looks pretty clean here. And I did take a can of air and blow out any dust that was in there. Now I'm going to start by removing the ribbon cables. Initially I thought that the pocket that the ribbon cable slides in and out of would come with it. It actually doesn't. That is part of the board. The ribbons themselves slide in and out of that. Now this cable here isn't a ribbon cable, but it does need to be disconnected, and the plasticky thing actually does disconnect from the board on this one. I tried to gently remove the face from the body, but as you can see, I pulled a little too hard and it came off a little more jarring than I wanted to. But that is in fact how it gets removed. It just slides forward. Now here is the don't do what I tried to do part of this video. I thought this piece also had to be disconnected. It doesn't, so I'm even going to kind of skip past this, but I did eventually try to pry it out. It doesn't come out. It doesn't need to come out, so do not do this. What you can do is untie or unwrap this little metal thing that holds this cable in, and also it kind of unclips from back there too. Now with that out of the way, the front unit should lay flat. And now here is another don't do what I'm about to do part again. By unscrewing these screws, it will remove the entire mechanism, and you don't need to do that. And I found this out the hard way, so I luckily had another chance and opportunity on the second deck on the other side. I learned by pulling this whole thing out, and I really didn't need to do that, so don't do this. And you'll see here just how clunky this is to kind of get in and out, and I had to take the face off, and again, save yourself the hassle. This part does not have to be done. The only silver lining out of this mistake is that I was able to get some really good photography of the unit not attached. So with my mistakes out of the way, let's pretend that we're starting from the beginning and lay this down flat like this. And while I'm at it, I'm going to turn this sideways to get a better view for the camera. Detach this cable from the little clip that's on the unit. I believe this is actually the power cable for the on-off button in the front. Now we have to remove this connection, which connects the top part of this unit to the bottom part of the unit. And this is where my initial error of removing the entire unit from the other side of the deck came in handy, because like I said, I got some really good photography here. so you can see exactly what piece I'm pulling out. These wires wrap in and around some of the little clips in there, so just kind of trace it back and gently pull it aside. And while I've got this out, you can see the manufacturer date stamp of the 1st of November 1991, which aligns with the year I thought I got it, which was in 92. So back to the way this should be done. These are the 3 screws that need to be removed that allow you to get the top piece of this unit off of the bottom piece of the unit to get to the belts. So grab that small Phillips head screwdriver and start to unscrew. Now that those screws are removed, carefully remove the top from the bottom. There are 2 clip-like things in the back. This kind of hinges off to get them out, and they come out of the clips fairly easily. It initially looks like this belt is a loose mess, but that's actually kind of the way it's supposed to be, because when you remove this top from the bottom, that belt slides off the motor part that's on the other top piece that I removed. Gently remove this belt. This one's not in too bad condition, but some of them really turn to mush over time, so you want to be careful to keep this area as clean as possible. Regardless, I'm still going to put some rubbing alcohol on a Q-tip and clean these wheels off. And you can see here I did remove some dirt after all. Of course, do the same for the other wheel as well. Now you can take your larger belt from your new belt set and route it around the wheels like so. After you wrap the belt around the wheels, they will have to be held in place by these arms that stick up. This is a temporary thing, and you'll see why when we assemble it back together. What this does is it holds this belt open for when the top piece gets laid on top. That's where the motor wheel will go into, and these belts will slide onto it. But this is definitely how this large belt is supposed to look. And here's another shot of it from the unit that I had removed earlier. Now I'll turn my attention to the upper unit, and here I'm just going to remove this belt. And in similar fashion, we're going to replace this belt, and it kind of does the same thing. It's going to rest on these arms that stick up. So when we take this top unit and put it onto that bottom unit, it also has a place for the motor area to go. And same thing here, I'm going to get some alcohol on a Q-tip and clean off this wheel as well. So now when I close this back up, this wheel here is going to be going into this area that's being held open by these arms, and this wheel here goes into this area being held open by these arms. And you'll see back here these plastic clips that it kind of hinges into almost like a clamshell, and then kind of gently goes down forward for you to be able to screw it back in. Again, I was able to get some really good photography with this, the unit that I mistakenly removed. But let's actually show the way it should be done with the unit still attached to the front body. Of course, at this point, I've already done the belts, and I'm just attaching the top to the bottom. Here you can see me fumbling with it. The camera was pretty close and the tripod was in the way, so all I did was just come around the other side of the tripod so I could get a better vantage point to attach it better. And there I got it. Now it's time to attach the screws. And I may as well use the pictures from the other unit that I removed since it's clearer and closer. So now the moment of truth. This is where I'm going to use that flathead screwdriver and gently guide this first belt down off those arms and onto this little wheel. Once it's on, you can gently move the wheel a little bit to make sure it's seated properly. Now we're going to do the same thing for the large belt. Same idea, just slide this up onto that wheel, and you can see I overshot a little bit, and I'm just going to gently pull it back down. And there, it looks like I got it. And similarly to the other belt, I'm just moving this along to make sure that everything's seated properly. And of course, don't forget to replace that other connector. Of course, for me to reattach the front to the body, I do need to replace the unit that I removed. With that out of the way, stand up the front of the unit and slide it into place. There are some additional connections that this unit plugs into, so just be careful as you're sliding it together. Once the front was reattached, I flipped it over and returned these screws first before I attached the ribbon cables. Flip it back over and replace the ribbon cables. The cables pretty much fall into the place where they're supposed to go, so finding where they go is very easy. And finally, replace the top cover and screw it back together. Now it's time to test it out, and I was able to find my very first cassette tape, and yes, this is it, Van Halen's 1984. That's likely about all I can play without getting a copyright strike. It appears that everything is working properly now. The display looks as bright as the day I remember getting it, and of course the tape seems to be moving fine with no wow and flutter. So I think I'm going to call this repair a success. Thanks for watching.